This is a video about Immortal Gates of Pyre. I'll be talking about things like, what's the difference between Immortal and literally any other RTS game? How can I get access? Why does the title sound like a mobile game? And explaining how Sunspear Games is innovating the real-time strategy genre. These concepts feel long overdue, and I'm excited to see what you think about them. I'll admit, I'm slightly biased. I'm very excited for this game, and based on what I've seen and read from their development as of yet, I think I have reason to. Allow me to explain. Like many games before, what has evolved into Immortal Gates of Pyre was originally a mod in the arcade for StarCraft 2. That mod was called Vanguard. Starting as a team of modders, the Sunspear team is very good at taking feedback. They, without fail, respond to communication. Whether it be a question regarding clarification, or just a thanks for putting your thoughts out there. You feel appreciated. In my experience, this is unfortunately rather uncommon. Feedback isn't the only highlight of communication between the community and the developers. Ideas are welcomed. Questions for the devs have their own text channel. Every week, there's a poll to decide a lore topic for an event, to talk and answer questions about that topic. There's so much going on, it's kind of overwhelming. I've tried keeping up. It's impossible. Unless your name is Zard, meanie head. It's not just casual players as well. There's also communication between SSG and big figures from the StarCraft 2 community. It's rather enlightening going over some of the articles that have been written on the Immortal site. You can tell they've been involved in the RTS community for a long time, and they understand the shortcomings of previous RTSs. In the StarCraft community in particular, it's been known that the majority of players don't even play in the multiplayer ladder, and that only a small percentage of those players get serious about it. There are multiple articles on the Immortal Gates of Pyre site where members at Sunspear talk about how they intend to achieve appealing to more casual players that have previously been attracted to and pushed away from the genre. To throw some examples out there, mandatory and optional skills, cutting the fat, reward for a diversity of skills, ceiling beyond human potential, and the list goes on. This really only is the tip of the iceberg. If you want to know more, I linked all of the articles referenced in the description. There's a lot of theory here, but how has SSG actually applied some of these ideas? One word. Pancake. No. Hotkeys, an integral and functional aspect of any game, are taken very seriously. Coming from StarCraft 2, there were some key innovations that I really enjoyed. The not-so-alarmy hotkey, a good example of cutting the fat, automatically adds produced units to one specific hotkey and otherwise acts as any other control group. Holding a specific key to open up a secondary layer of the command card, rather than pressing a certain key and not being able to back out other than pressing escape. All your production buildings are automatically added to a hotkey, and you can access every building with the single command card without having to tab through different buildings as you did in StarCraft 2. This goes for groups of units in control groups as well. No need to tab through selecting one unit at a time. Every ability is neatly organized on the one command card with the ability to access the secondary layer using What am I saying? Secondary layer using spacebar. Using spacebar for control groups instead of control took surprisingly little time to get used to. My pinky is grateful for this change. Weak. A heavy influence on the hotkeys for Immortal has come from Tom, Jack Attack, and Coulter, Foxy Mayhem. Names some may recognize as the designers of the core for StarCraft 2, who clearly cared a lot about their work. The overarching ideas behind the positions of every specific command on the command card are clearly well thought out.
West, you haven't once mentioned how on earth Sunspear is going to balance 15 different characters over 5 different factions.
Oh boy, I got a treat for you.
From all those enthusiastic about Immortal that have joined their main Discord, link in the description, one of the questions I see the most is how does SSG possibly expect to balance 15 unique races when StarCraft 2, the golden standard for RTS, had trouble balancing only 3? And this is a valid question. Answers vary depending on who you ask. I did some research, and the reality to me is simple. It felt like StarCraft sucked at balancing their races. Now, before you come pounding down my door with pitchforks and torches, that's not very fair to the hard workers at Blizzard. So let's look at the facts of StarCraft 2 balancing history. From the brightest minds and those arguably most successful at making an RTS game, making the game fair was touted as an impossible balancing act. What strategies were good and what weren't changed on a regular basis through balance patches. Over and over again, players were forced to play a certain way in StarCraft 2. Maybe it was a result of what your opponent was doing, maybe it was a result of how the game was at the time. The point is, whatever hole they plugged in the dam opened up 2 more somewhere else. This comes down to the game's design. It was flawed.
How dare you! StarCraft 2 is the best RTS. I'm gonna—
Wait, give me a chance.
StarCraft 2 earned its place as one of the best RTSs in history, and it was well deserved. But when it comes down to it, the reality is that the way StarCraft 2 was designed, making the game perfectly fair was like trying to balance a cup on the end of a skewer. It never ends well. So how does Sunspear Games intend to overcome this seemingly unattainable hurdle? 2 words. Unit roles. Frontliner, Generalist, Assassin, Force Multiplier, Harrier, Skirmisher, Zone Control. That's not supposed to be there. Dislodger, Air Denial, Air Superiority, Elite Caster. With every race having a general guideline for unit roles, balancing them becomes a much easier problem. This is not the only improvement to the dynamic of the RTS genre.
We've seen third resources before. This is nothing new.
Pyre, the third resource in Immortal, is, in my opinion, the most game-changing innovation to the RTS genre that Immortal has to offer. To fully understand the effect that Pyre has on the dynamic of the game, we have to look at how macro works in Immortal. In StarCraft 2, there were tons of actions that needed to be taken in order to complete your macro cycle. Macro in Immortal does not require as much attention as compared to StarCraft 2. This comes back to the cutting the fat and optional skill strategies of SSG's game design. You can micro your workers back to the alloy line once they're done building something, but they also go back to work on their own after a certain time. Supply and production facilities are combined into one. The point of all this is there isn't as much attention required to reach an optimal macro level, meaning you have more time for other things, like getting your Pyre stolen, losing your whole worker line to 2 invisible units. What does this mutalisk look like? Because of the amount of attention it takes to keep your macro up, there's more time freed up.
Boring. I need to be able to spam 600 APM while I'm watching my workers. Yes.
This is where the Pyre comes in. You don't just mine Pyre. You have to go out to specific places on the map and take it. Then you can use your Immortal specific abilities with that resource on the battlefield to go make your opponents blind. Gain an advantage. Pyre has a profound effect on the state of the game. That time that used to be put into macro is now put into microing your army for map control and control of the Pyre camps. On top of that, health and damage values are arranged in such a way that, compared to StarCraft 2, Immortal's fights last longer. This melting pot results in an insane difference in pacing. I can't even imagine what high-level Immortal gameplay will look like when the game is finished. I asked some of the StarCraft 2 Grandmasters that have come over what they thought about the difference in pace when playing Immortal, and the responses were interesting. I grew up on games like Halo Combat Evolved, and anyone who's ever gotten seriously into Halo knows that there's a ton of lore. Being a fan of big universes and backstories, I was astounded by the amount of the universe they had modeled. I could literally do a whole video talking about all the different planets, civilizations, cultures, characters, governments, religions, environments, geography, physics, resources. For this stage of development, it's rather impressive. There are those who've condemned the genre to an eventual death. But considering how long it's taken to die, and how much interest there still is, I'm not so sure. Maybe I'm just another diehard RTS enjoyer, clinging to the hope that RTS will become more popular than it has been recently. But I get the feeling that I'm not alone. There's clearly still a market for a real-time strategy, and it will come down to the right formula for the community to move on from StarCraft 2. If you want to learn more about Immortal Gates of Pyre, maybe you want to check out some of that lore that I completely skimmed over, or maybe interested in some of the tournaments that are already happening. Link to the Discord is in the description, as well as links to their website and the lore book, which is literally as close to the definition of tip of the iceberg can get. Currently being in closed alpha, the official Discord is where you can find out how to get access and start playtesting. It's easier than you'd think. I also briefly talked about some of the insights into the dynamics of RTS some of the members at Sunspear have. I've linked those articles as well. I'd recommend them if you're looking for more depth into how exactly Sunspear is approaching development. Heed these words with great care, for this meme, like our jokes, run from the god meme Walter herself. She speaks of the hour of our reckoning. Our darned kin, the non-memesters, have come to our sacred shores to wage war in the names of their lore-accurate gods. Long have we prepared for their arrival. We have memed and sacrificed. We have grown dank. We have become the arbiters of cool and cringe. Walter, blessing creation with her presence for at least 7 billion years, has throughout history— Wait a minute.